Most valuable U.S. independence stamps. The 1988 Conestoga stamp represents one of the most used means during the American Revolutionary War. This wagon, created and invented by German colonists in the 1700s in Lancaster County, in Pennsylvania, takes its name from the place where it was designed, from the town of Conestoga. This covered wagon, it was capable of carrying up to 6 tons, transported by horses, mules or oxen. It had been designed so that the objects inside it, they didn't move, and also to facilitate the crossing of rivers and streams. Normally the Conestoga was used a lot during fairs, to transport products, or at farmers' markets. Above the image, the written Conestoga wagon. A little further down, the year 1800, in which it was widely used. Lower left, the nominal value of the piece, 3 cents of the American dollar. Postage stamp issued on February 29, 1988. It had a circulation of 129 million copies, with a 10 duration. Today one of these pieces can be worth up to $6. The 1989 Constitution stamp was issued on the occasion of the bicentenary, since the entry into force of the Constitution of the United States of America. Drawn up in 1787. It officially came into force in 1789. After the American Revolutionary War, it became necessary to increase the federal authority and strengthen a real political institution in the country. In 1789, the House of Representatives met for the first time. It was composed of 59 members, each of which represented a district voted by 30,000 voters. In 1989, 200 years later, one district was supported by as many as 527,000 voters. You will be able to see on the center, the Muse, a minor deity from ancient Greece. She belonged to the god Apollo, inhabitant of Olympus. It symbolized the one who makes famous, inspiration of the history of humanity. All top, the written bicentennial House of Representatives. A little further down on the right, the nominal value of the piece, 25 cents of the American dollar. Postage stamp issued on April 4, 1989. It had a circulation of 138 million copies, with an 11 duration. Today it's worth $10. The 1989 mailbox stamp, issued in the American Independence series, on the occasion of the 200th anniversary of the independent U.S. Postal Service. It depicts a man who brings his own envelope to leave inside a mailbox. March 9, 1858. Iron manufacturer Albert Potts of Philadelphia patented one of the first mail collection boxes. Boxes that were placed along delivery routes. Couriers collected mail from Monday to Saturday. And thanks to the payment of a fee, from 2 cents per item, the mail was transported to the post office. The patent consisted of fixing these mailboxes to street lamps, in order to facilitate those visiting the city to identify the mailbox. This method brought, in fact, metaphorically speaking, the post office at everyone's door. Behind the mailbox, you will be able to see a car from the time that served the post offices. Top left, the nominal value of the piece, 25 cents of the American dollar. All below, the edition of the 20th Congress of the Universal Postal Union, a philately market expo, where this stamp was displayed. Piece released on November 19, 1989. It had a circulation of 41 million copies, with an 11 duration. Today a sheet containing 5 of these original specimens is worth $11. The 1976 Valley Forge stamp depicts the winter camp of the Continental Army, led by George Washington, during the American Revolutionary War. The camp is located in Valley Forge Valley, about 50 kilometers from Philadelphia. It was initially in the hands of the British Empire. In this area, Washington, he trained his troops for 6 months, creating military tactics and strategies, which became fundamental in subsequent battles. Area that trained several thousand soldiers. The Continental Army left 6 months later. the camp on December 18, and began to achieve victories against his enemies. Battles that led to independence. In response to this military force, which allowed in Valley Forge to obtain the training necessary to achieve American independence, the Second Continental Congress issued a national day of thanksgiving to the entire country on December 18, recommending to all people to stop and thank God for blessing America and his troops in their quest to achieve independence. Postage stamp issued on May 29, 1976. It had a circulation of 1,990,000 copies, with an 11 serration. Today a sheet containing 3 pieces is worth $18. The surrender stamp. At Saratoga in 1977. It was issued on the occasion of the 200th anniversary since the end of the Saratoga campaign, an event that played a fundamental role during the American Revolutionary War. The defeat by General John Burgoyne, in command of the British troops, who had had many military successes against the U.S. colonies, lost the battle controlling the American forces at Saratoga, an event which became a great military and propaganda success for the American colonies, influencing and encouraging also the decision of France to go to war alongside the rebel colonies against Great Britain. On the center, you will be able to see the moment when the British general in the center, he gives up his troops on the left. To the right, the Continental Army of the Colonies. Down, the writing commemorating the event, with the nominal value of the piece, 13 cents of the US dollar. Commemorative stamp, included in the series of the bicentennial of American independence, was released on October 7, 1977. It had a circulation of 153 million copies, with an 11 by 10.5 perforation. Today a sheet containing 40 of these specimens is worth $30. The 1926 White Plains commemorative stamp. Remember the Battle of White Plains, fought during the war on October 28, 1776, where the Continental Army, under the leadership of George Washington, clashed with William Howe's British Army. A clash of 14,000 soldiers, where he saw the British Army win. On the center, you will be able to see a heavy artillery gun, used around by Continental Army soldiers. With this image, Alexander Hamilton is also commemorated on this stamp, head of artillery, who strategically positioned the cannons to allow the Continental Army to retreat without ending the battle, in a total defeat for his side. Above the image, the date 1776, year in which the battle took place. To the right, 1926, year of the 150th anniversary of the event. Down, above the nominal value of the piece, 2 cents of the US dollar. You will be able to see on the left, the flag of the United States of America. To the right, the heavy artillery flag of the Continental Army. Postage stamp issued on October 18, 1926. It had a circulation of 107,000 copies. Today one of these stamps is worth $39. The 1932 Washington postage stamp. It is part of the commemorative series, in honor of the 200th anniversary since the birth of George Washington, commander of the Continental Army, during the American Revolutionary War. About this piece, you will be able to see it depicted in the period between 1750 and 1753, when Washington, aide-de-camp to General Edward Braddock, in the southeastern state of the United States, he began to feel like an American, and not a Briton, citizen of a distant homeland. Following an armed clash, his chief general was wounded, and the Virginia Assembly assigned Washington to defend and take command, obtaining the rank of colonel. Above the bust, the writing United States postage. All below, the date 1732, year of his birth, and 1932, year of anniversary and issue of this piece. Lower, the nominal value reported in both numbers and letters, 1.5 cents of the US dollar. Postage stamp issued on January 1, 1932. 305 million copies were printed. and today it is worth $125. The 1925 Lexington Concord stamp. It is part of the first series of U.S. stamps that honor the Revolutionary War. This series, called Lexington Concord, depicts George Washington's army in Cambridge, Massachusetts, the colonies in that period. They were to choose a commander to head the Continental Army. Among the many characters who had a political and military role at the time, Washington was chosen, who was placed in charge of a command of 14,500 men, reunited on this stump in Cambridge, ready to leave for the War of Independence. Up. The writing is shown. United States postage. Down. The writing from the Lexington Concord series. On the side, the number indicating the nominal value of the piece. 1 cent of the US dollar. Postage stamp issued on April 4, 1925. It had a circulation of 15,615,000 copies, with an 11 perforation. Today it is worth $375. The 1860 Benjamin Franklin stamp was issued due to increased shipping rates of any national letter, which weighed up to half an ounce and had to be shipped over 3,000 miles. You will be able to see the bust of Benjamin Franklin, considered one of the founding fathers of the United States. Took an active role during the Revolutionary War, contributed to the drafting of the Declaration of Independence, and he was the only one among the founding fathers to participate in the drafting of all three major documents of the United States. The drafting of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. The drafting of the Articles of Confederation in 1777. And the drafting of the United States Constitution in 1787. Up. The writing is shown. US postage. Down. The nominal value of the piece reported in the number 30. On the sides of the face, the value is written in letters. 30 cents of the American dollar. Stamp printed in orange color, because it was more difficult to counterfeit. It was generally used to send letters to Europe, effectively covering the postal rates for sending parcels and correspondence. Released August 8, 1860. It had a circulation of 356,000 pieces, with a 15.5 perforation. Today it is worth $1,150. The 1869 Declaration of Independence stamp. It depicts the act of declaring the independence of the United States of America. Act in which a committee, composed of the Founding Fathers, prepared the official text and the formal text of the Declaration of Independence. The text was presented at the Congress and approved on July 4, 1776. In this depiction, you will be able to see the Committee of Five standing in front of the main desk of the Congress, where the text was presented for approval. Above the image, the written postage. Down. The nominal value reported in letters. 24 cents of the US dollar. Greenish stamp. He was released on April 7, 1869. It had a circulation of 250,000 copies, with a 12 mm perforation. Today it is worth $3,250. The 1857 George Washington portrait stamp. It was used for distances exceeding 3,000 miles. The tariff had recently been raised for sending any national letter. Tariffs that were used to pay for the construction of railways and transport. Printed in green ink using a single plate. The design is engraved on the mold, a small piece of flat steel, which was copied onto a transfer roll, a white roll of steel. You will be able to see the face of President George Washington imprinted, with 13 stars on it, symbolizing the 13 American colonies. Top on the sides, the letter X, which indicates the nominal value of the piece, in Roman numerals. Down. The writing 10 cents. Postage stamp issued on August 25, 1857. It had a circulation of 600,000 copies, with a 15.5 perforation. Today it is worth $10,000. The stamp sheet containing the 1916 5-cent error. It is part of a rare series. The peculiarity lies in the center. A 5-cent stamp, surrounded and printed on a sheet containing 8 other stamps with a face value of 2 cents. Pieces depicting the face of George Washington. This sheet was engraved and printed at the end of the First World War. The office overworked and understaffed. To keep up with requests, he had mistakenly engraved on some evidence plates the roll on which only the 2-cent US dollar stamps were intended. Only 50 copies of this sheet exist, containing 8 2-cent stamps. And in the center, the value of 5 cents was incorrectly printed. This misprint, he gave the entire sheet a value of $24,500. The 1876 Benjamin Franklin stamp. It was issued on the occasion of the Philatelic Exhibition in Philadelphia. On the occasion of the Centenary of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. The event welcomed 37 different countries and was visited by over 10 million visitors. The stamp depicts a bust of Benjamin Franklin. This piece is a reprint of the 1-cent piece of the series printed in 1857. Up, you will be able to see the writing. US postage. Down, the face value of the stamp. 1 cent of the US dollar. Stamp issued for collectors and not for postal use. It had a limited edition compared to the pieces intended for trade. The paper is harder and whiter than other stamps. Issued in 1876, today it is worth $27,500.